Branding, a term that was seldom used in the music business back in the 60s and 70s. Most music entities at the time didn't foresee a long-term future for their artists. Little did they know that rock and roll icons such as Elvis, the Beatles, and Led Zeppelin would outlive their active careers and their brands would become more profitable than ever before.
The band versus brand discussion isn't just something that's contemporary or goes back even 10, 20 years. This has been going on for decades. When you had groups like the Glenn Miller Orchestra and the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, who were big bands with leaders, and eventually the leaders died, but the group kept going.
A brand is so important. It's like any product or any company. It's everything.
The trademark, the shield, the chevron, the wings, all of that. That's our brand. That is our trade.
The brand carries a lot. I mean, when you see that name on a poster, you open up a newspaper, you see it, you flip through Facebook or whatever, and you see a brand and they're playing, a band playing. It is a brand. It's just like Chevrolet or Apple Computer or Gillette or whatever.
And then after that, you get into the doo-wop era with vocal groups like the Moonglows and the Ink Spots. And eventually, if they had 4 or 5 guys in the band, they got down to one original guy, or maybe no original guys.
It's a touchy subject. I'm not against branding a band. I mean, I think that's fantastic, But I think there should be some integrity in there, and when you sell it out a little too much, it becomes it's not real anymore. It's not what it was, and it's unfortunate that that a lot of the younger generation aren't going to experience what that was at that time.
And then from there you get into 60s bands like Herman's Hermits and Paul Revere and the Raiders, bands like that, a lot of which are still around today, with one original member or no original members. I believe the Trogs, who did Wild Thing, are still playing. All the original guys are dead.
It's an interesting phenomenon, but I think it's been something that's happened for quite a while. I think a lot of artists sometimes suffer from it in a way because they realize, shoot, the brand is more powerful than I am. You know what I mean?
These days, bands have to be a lot more protective of their brand. Not that it wasn't important back then, but I think today's environment with where we are, where bands really can't rely on a lot of income coming in from selling records. They have to rely on merchandise. They have to rely on licensing to film and TV, hopefully getting some airplay that generates some royalties for them.
So then you take that from up to the present day, where you've got groups like the Temptations and the Four Tops. One original member in each of those bands. They go out and they play the Greek Theater, which is 4,000 people, and on a double bill, and they sell the thing out because people want to hear those bodies of work.
A lot more musicians need to have a better understanding of branding in business, period. Because that's where musicians fail most of the time, is they don't understand that you have to market yourself and you have to be a good business person. Especially these days when it's really hard to sell recorded music.
Your branding is probably one of the strongest things that you can have in today's music industry. You gotta have the logo, you gotta have the look, and you gotta have the brand. That's what people buy.
Internet and online digital streaming, merchandising has become a necessary means of artist branding. It is vital to own the trademark and to establish an eye-catching logo to imprint on everything from t-shirts, baseball caps, and stickers to alcoholic beverages, tattoos, and condoms.
I think the argument can be made that the brand is more important than the band. These days, I would venture to say that a lot of bands make a lot more money merchandising their name than they do selling their records. The profit margin is so much greater on the sale of a T-shirt than it is on a sale of a record, especially if you're signed to a major label and you're working to pay back your advances, your corporate debt between your recording and your tour support and the outside promotion. All of a sudden, you're up over $1 million on a record, and you're paying the record company back with the smallest sliver of the pie of each record sale. And the record companies find very creative ways to tell you that you've sold less records than you have. Right. Even today with digital distribution, until recently there was deductions for breakage. It's absurd.
I remember back in the late 90s when we were making some of our records that were getting radio success, there was that fine line, because that Megadeth name and that logo on a record, it stood for a quality control. Right. When you buy a Ford or a Mercedes or whatever you buy, there has to be you expect a certain quality of something that goes along with it, and that same thing happens, I think, with bands and their music.
The litmus test of it all is, where are these bands in their career and their earning power? And most of them are not making new recordings that fans really react to or care about. They need to be on the road selling merchandise. Look at the VIP packages now in many of these tours. That's a big money maker for a lot of acts. They can go out and get 300 people to pay $125 to meet the band and get a photo taken. That goes a long way for a lot of these acts to pick up the extra money.
It's the branding thing, isn't it? It's why it sort of has an importance that you don't realize when you're just playing in a band. It never occurred to me to trademark the name of the band, but Dave trademarked it because he wanted to bootleg all the T-shirts and all the artwork that Barney Bubbles had done, which Dave doesn't have the right to do that, but he sold the rights to some other T-shirt manufacturing company or something like that, and gets all the money for it.
When we did the Venom logo, it was meant to be something that you could barely read. And these days, it's nothing compared to a death metal or a black metal logo, but crazy.
As far as logos and merchandise goes with bands, it's a complicated and unique situation that's unique to every band. What rights did they retain? What rights did they sign away? In the case of Iron Maiden, I believe that Paul Di'Anno, who sang on the first two albums, was offered a lump sum of money when he needed money for all his rights connected to Iron Maiden. The album sales, the song publishing, the logo, everything.
There is no integrity. When it comes to the almighty dollar, the integrity goes out the window every time. We could all sit here and fantasize and dream about the days when our favorite bands or artists were great. But now that we're 30, 40 years in on this, and what's left is just the trademark, whoever is left in the game, they're going to capitalize on that and make a dollar out of it.
We trademark our name. As soon as we get signed to a record deal, because it says in the record deal that you have the right to enter into it, that your assets that you own is with your music, your copyrights, your logo, your name, that's can't ever be contested. You're basically giving approval for that, so that the record company doesn't get into trouble. So as soon as we sign those deals, our lawyers come to us and say you need to trademark your name. And trademarks are often owned by one person, sometimes they're owned by a corporation, any number of ways, which is why you see bands over the years going through all these fights and members sort of disappear out of it, and it's one guy left standing.
They don't really know, but they're thinking, oh, okay, this will be hip. I've seen this around. It looks kind of symmetrical. It's cool. It's not unlike the Coca-Cola brand, or if you were to see the Stones' tongue logo. Everyone who knows that logo or sees that associates with it because it's a strong brand.
Back in 1988, the Ferrari Motor Company did not object to us, using the name Ferrari. However, in 1989, when we circled back to them, they did. And actually, they did not object to us releasing an album under the name Ferrari. What they objected to was putting the word Ferrari on a t-shirt and selling it. Because back in those days, the Ferrari Motor Company actually made as much money licensing their name to products as they did from their automobiles.
There was a thrash band called Slaughter.
Right, I'm very familiar with it. I guess it was the statute of limitations. They hadn't had something out for a while, so we were able to use the name.
Hey.
Smart's actual real name.
I know.
We get away with it. As long as it's my name, it's cool.
I decided to form Diana Cancer and the Grave Robbers and start resurrecting some of the old 45 grave material. Then I had a meeting with Paul Cutler, and he gave me one of the best birthday presents I ever had. He gave me the name 45 Grave.
I mean, the iconic imaging of Motorhead, the CBGB's logo, the Ramones. I mean, these are entities now that are probably going to make money for years and years and years, maybe even more money than they did in the heyday of the venue or the band themselves, just on the merchandising rights. And those rights can be incredibly valuable. Now, the truth is, in the vast majority of bands and artists, the rights don't extend for 20, 30, 40 years. But maybe you get lucky. Maybe you have a hit. Maybe you have 2 hit albums. Maybe you have a song that goes down into history, and you can always tour on that.
But our crew chief came back while we were getting ready to do the show, just before we were getting ready, and he said, I have something you guys got to see. And of course, everyone goes, "What is it?" And this guy did a logo for you guys, and there have been a lot of that stuff. I mean, a lot of fans do things like that, and so we said, no, we'll look at it after we're done. Let's do the show. He said, "No, you got to look at this," and we're looking at it, and we said, no, and as we were saying no, he kind of turned it upside down, and everyone just stopped and went, "Do that again," and he did it again. We went, "What?" So we talked to the fan, and we incorporated it into our next album.
I mean, look at Glenn Danzig and the Misfits. I mean, for all the years, the Misfits did not include Glenn. You've got Doyle and the various other incarnations, Jerry of the Misfits doing various things. My understanding is Glenn Danzig still made money from Misfits merchandising. Now the band gets back together, plays a few shows. That's an incredible story. I mean, the Misfits now are clearly more important in terms of drawing an audience today than they were in their original so-called heyday.
Longevity is the key to success for any business, and the music industry is no exception. Owning the rights to a brand and keeping the name current is essential for any musician to attain a long-lasting career.
Ultimately, the thing that all these bands have the benefit of is the passage of time. They go from washed-up has-beens to living legends.
Bands are brands, and I mean, as a fan of the music, you just, I guess, ultimately want to hear that song played. But man, it's so much better when you see the original guys playing it. Now, of course, as we know, we all get older, and goals and life changes for everybody, and sometimes maybe it's better not to see a gaunt image of the guy you used to, be on your poster wall down there playing the songs anymore. Maybe it's better to replace them.
Aging sucks. I mean, getting old sucks. And anything that'll transport us back into time to enjoy that time in our life where we were kind of carefree and that those things were important to us, you're going to go, yeah, I'd like to relive that experience just one more time.
There was a great adage, when you're young, play with old guys. When you're old, play with young guys. And, the young guys, a lot of them will work for a lot cheaper than some of the older guys will.
Can they perform like they used to? This is another issue. When you hit late 60s, early 70s, is your body capable of doing what it is? Is Steve Perry capable of singing Journey like he used to? And that's what people want. Yeah. David Coverdale has a hard time from the fans and the press alike. But at the end of the day, David's got the hits. Sure. I'll see Whitesnake any day of the week. I think they're great, but does he You know, arguably, does he sing like he did in 1980? No.
There's been some cases where some guys left bands and had really successful solo careers. Speaking of that, look at Ozzy Osbourne.
Sure.
Getting fired from Black Sabbath and then having such an amazing solo career.
Right.
Getting as big as Black Sabbath.
They continued to play without me for a while, and I couldn't bear to go see it without myself in it. So. In January of '93, they called me up on the phone and they said, hey, you know, we have an offer to go to Europe to do a big tour, 65 shows, 2 months in Europe, and but the whole thing is contingent upon you being in the band. It's without fee, we have no offer.
No matter how old the band is, it's artist development, constant artist development. So if the band's been around 47 years, doesn't matter. You still, same with Uriah Heep, every day we're coming up with new ideas to redevelop that brand, to keep them current. Otherwise they just fall by the wayside.
But it's also maybe one of the exceptions to the rule, because a lot of guys that have went on to do solo careers, they were never as successful as their bands.
Well, I wouldn't have imagined it. I never thought I was ever going to be successful. When I was playing in Hawkwind, I thought, wow, it's great playing in a band. I never thought, oh, we'll have a #1 record and we'll have, all this success, all this longevity and all these legal disputes. No.
I didn't know Phil. I saw him, but I saw him live. But I don't ever profess to know the man. But from what I've been told from people that knew him, I think Phil would have been happy that Scott is continuing the legacy that he's been doing with the Thin Lizzy and keeping it on a high. So I think that's really very important when it comes to branding.
No artist in the history of music has capitalized on the business of branding more than Kiss.
In terms of contemporary bands that have made themselves into a brand, I guess Kiss probably is at the top of the heap. When you consider all the different licensed products that are involved with. I read somewhere it was several thousand. Throughout their history, they have several thousand things that they lent their name to.
Kiss are the masters of of this and of understanding that. You know what I mean? You'll see solo records go left and right. You'll see that happen. They'll try this. They'll try that. But in the end of the day, Kiss is an entity, and that whole corporate, that thing they have going, that the imagery, everything that goes with that brand, and I think they're one of the best at really keeping it so tight and so defined, and so you take off the makeup and went a little left, and we still sold records, but it was already like the fans are like, you guys are messing with our stuff here.
Before they took the makeup off, you didn't know what Kiss looked like without the makeup. It was this mystery. But they came back in '96, put the makeup back on after, 13 years of being naked.
Kiss is probably one of the few who stands in sort of a league of their own just because of the makeup, and they've already started that transition of, hey, it doesn't have to be these four guys. It's about the faces and the makeup and the costumes, and they've been successful with it to some degree.
The remaining members of the band, they want to continue to exploit the name, then it's up to them. But my personal opinion, I wouldn't buy, a new Kiss record with members that aren't Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, and Peter Criss. It's just doesn't work like that, at least for me. I love the the integrity of the band and the respect of the band and the band's name. That I prefer over just exploiting, the brand or the product.
A lot of people are still complaining about Ace Frehley not being in the band. I mean, there you go, and it's been a while. You know what I mean? Doesn't stop everything they're doing now. They'll complain, but they'll still go to the shows. That's the funny thing about the Kiss entity. Everybody will complain, everybody will bitch, but it doesn't matter. They'll still go, and it's like, I'm going anyways. But I don't know if it would have the same impact. But you know what? I think if it gets to the point where there's nothing else, and that's where it's got to go, people are probably going to say, it's either that or no Kiss. Right. So it's like, and we love our Kiss.
Many classic rock and heritage rock artists are currently reaping the rewards more so now than they did back in their heyday. Numerous bands from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even the 90s are reuniting in an effort to relive their glory years, or in many cases, strictly for the payday.
I know a lot of young kids. My nephew, he's 10 years old, just loves older music, just loves the classic rock stuff. He doesn't know who was in the band back in the day. He gets a record, wants to hear the music, wants to go and see a live concert, and he doesn't care, you know, because he doesn't know them.
I'm a sucker for the original lineups and seeing like the original guys. Like when Guns N' Roses got back together, you saw those tours were selling out like crazy.
I give you the example of a band like Queen, you know, Roger Taylor and Brian May. They certainly were there building up that Queen name with Freddie Mercury. Now, the fact that Freddie passed, you know, they didn't pass along with him. That name didn't die with Freddie. They obviously have the, you know, entitled right to go on and carry that name. And it's such a strong brand. That's why I bring that up, you know. Whereas you have purists that are like, well, no one can replace Freddie. Well, that's obvious. I mean, I don't think that they're trying to get someone to fit into that mold. But yes, they do have a body of work that is very popular all over the world. No, we're not talking America. They're probably least popular in America. But, you know, you talk Europe, you talk in South America, Japan, you know, that is a huge brand. And, you know, you go to Roger Taylor or Brian May and say, you know, well, you know, we don't really think it's right that you carry that name, you know, through, or you carry that brand through, you know. It's bullshit.
You've got Paul Rodgers goes out with Queen. I mean, are Freddie Mercury and Paul Rodgers about the most different vocalist, stylistically, personality-wise, stage presence-wise, flamboyant versus not flamboyant? I mean, that's an incredible, strange thing. And I think we all thought back when Paul Rodgers worked in The Firm with Jimmy Page, oh, this is going to be magical. I mean, you've got one of the great guitar gods, you've got one of the great singers, and that was a disaster, I thought, creatively. I mean, there was one or two songs on each album they did, but then you come to the Queen plus Paul Rodgers. I thought that was the silliest thing ever.
I mean, Lou Gramm, bless him, had a problem with his voice, and Kelly Hansen just kills it. Now, is it affecting Foreigner's level? I don't think Foreigner will be any bigger.
You have bands that change singers when they're still young and vibrant, and they care. To me, they really cared and wanted to make a mark. Black Sabbath gets Ronnie James Dio, makes arguably, or inarguably, one of the greatest rock records of all time, Heaven and Hell. And Dio could not be a more different singer than Ozzy was. I mean, when John Bush got into Anthrax, I mean, to me, The Sound of White Noise is one of the great rock records of that era. And he sounded nothing like Joey Belladonna did. You know, AC/DC with Brian Johnson coming in after Bon Scott, to me, they sounded nothing alike. They made a seminal record. I mean, to me, these bands got new singers in who sounded different, but they were still determined. It was about creativity. It was about being relevant and vibrant, and they brought it. They brought their A game.
I would want to get a singer that sounded, you know, like there was a guy, just as a smart thing to do, just so the songs would sound more, you know. Because if you get a foreigner, let's say you got the guy from White Zombie up there singing, you know, foreigner songs, you know. Yeah, let's go to this, you know. I don't think it'd work.
There's enough real original members in Journey that having a lead singer that's that good. And also, if you see the documentary on the guy, he's very likable. There's a very humanistic quality to that film. We got to root for that guy. And so something like that, I think it makes sense. You still got a great guitar player out there. You still got a great drummer and a great band, a great keyboard player, a great bass player. I mean, Journey's a great band. But some of these guys would go out, and the band was marginal to begin with, and then they go out with a marginal replacement of a guy that was marginal to begin with, and then pretty soon you're like, well, why am I going to see this band?
My opinion about that is, I think it's really up to the artist. Like you say, some bands, for example, it's pretty clear that Journey were looking for that kind of voice. It could have gone a totally different direction, but they were looking out, they were watching out for their legacy. They knew what their fans wanted, and they wanted to give them exactly just that.
Right.
So that's a respectful decision.
I saw Deep Purple in 1980 at Long Beach Arena, which held 14,000 people, and it was sold out. And I did discover prior to the show that Deep Purple was only the original singer who sang on 2 of their minor hits and didn't contain any other members of the heavy band that did Smoke on the Water and Highway Star and Burn and all that kind of material. I'd already bought the tickets, and I was just kind of puzzled and just wanted to see how the hell they could get away with this and see it in person. And unsurprisingly, they sucked big time, and the audience let them know it.
What makes a great band is the chemistry between a specific lineup. I mean, take the Beatles, for example. You take one of them out, it's not the Beatles anymore, you know? So that's what made the Beatles great. It was, John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Same with Led Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin is a slightly different because one of the guys died, one of the main guys, and that was a conscious decision not to go out, and it's kept that brand intact. They could sell out the world in a minute if they did a tour.
Some claim that originality and creativity has become a thing of the past. Rather than developing and producing original material, newer artists are realizing that they can be successful forming or joining a tribute band.
We're musical theater. That's how I look at it. It's like we're portraying a character. So when I go out and do the Foreigner stuff, or when I'm singing with Rock Fantasy or whatever, and I'm portraying Lou Gramm, I'm really trying to be that person. I'm trying to sound like him, look like him, move like him, the whole thing. Because what we want to do is, like you said, Foreigner now is basically a tribute band. A lot of these bands now, you can't see the original lineup for whatever reason. Either the guys aren't doing it anymore, or like you said, there's 2 factions. So what we try to do is take the band at their pinnacle and do what they did then.
When Sammy Hagar got into Van Halen, I still will tell you, I think 5150 is one of the great Van Halen albums. Now I think a lot of these bands, they want the close your eyes test. If you close your eyes and you listen, does the new singer sound like the old singer does?
With the band period, what I ran into was the whole thing that we're treated as a tribute band. And when you have 3 guys that have been was in Dio's band for almost 30 years, to me it's not a tribute band. But if people think it's a tribute band, you get treated as that, and then you're screwed.
A cover band can go out and they play, and they can maybe put in their own take on the song or whatever. But a tribute band is a little more. I don't want to use the word confined, but it is. It's confined musically because you are playing exactly what they wrote, and that's what the people want to see.
I went to see Fleetwood Mac back in the 70s. And I knew the lineup was always fluctuating, but it always had Mick Fleetwood and John McVie in it. And I showed up to see them, and these 5 guys come on stage, and it was the ultimate case of, who are these people? This isn't Fleetwood Mac. This is 5 guys, and they came on, and they were basically a Fleetwood Mac cover band. But the manager of Fleetwood Mac had managed to con Mick Fleetwood and John McVie into signing documents that said he had the right to the Fleetwood Mac name.
I mean, look at Richie Faulkner. To me, Judas Priest drafted in a guy that from a distance looks like K.K. Downing. And I think Richie's great. I think he's brought a lot of energy to the band. I think his songwriting on the last record was really top flight. I think it's a really credible record. But to me, they did that. He wears the sunglasses. He plays the flying V. If I'm 50 rows back, I think it's KK Downing on stage.
And sometimes there's very little difference between a tribute band and the real thing. A lot of it just comes down to legalities.
It's the songs. And if you can reproduce the music in a fashion that brings those people back to where they were when they, either, were in high school or college or whenever they heard that song for the first time or their first concert, and you can give them the memory to that experience, I think that's what people want to have and why they enjoy tribute bands.
I was talking with Carmine Appice about, he was trying to put together this thing where all the guys in Rod Stewart's band, from different versions of it, were going out and doing some dates. And he said it was so crazy. He said some of the tribute Rod Stewart bands were making more money than the original guys. I mean, it's such a weird thing going on out there that you have to kind of it falls into so many different categories. And the other thing too is there's the tribute bands seems to be making more money than a lot of the newer bands that are trying to do things. And
the good thing about being in a tribute band, you don't have to worry about writing the next record.
Artist relationships are a lot like a marriage, and just like in a marriage, a frivolous dispute can end up costing artists millions of dollars in future income.
I would love to live in a world where the members of my band sign an oath of loyalty and we're together forever and it's the right members and everybody fits in. But reality gets in the way.
We did this thing called the Orchestra in London at the Brixton Academy, which was supposed to feature everybody that had played in the band. Well, Dave omitted to invite a few people that he didn't particularly like, which is, it's bullshit really.
Some guys don't want to go out and tour anymore, and some guys do,
You
like
guys do.
me, and I do, and I've been touring. I do a lot of different things, so all the time. So I'm not ready, and I'm this founding member band with Andy, and I love him, but we weren't ready to put the band down. I said, do I look like I'm ready to put the band down? No.
I just found out the other day, this is how bad the two camps are. I got nothing against them. I know why they fired me, and I would have done the same thing. So, all's good here. But I found out the Best Of album went gold like a year ago in December, and nobody ever told me. I never even got one.
You're going to have lawsuits, you're going to have problems, people are going to be fighting over who's using the name and who should not be using the name and all that stuff. But I don't necessarily think I don't think it's a black and white thing, and I think a lot of people agree with that. But it gets a little complicated.
And a lot of times you see bands that someone started the band, but another member comes in and he's a stronger member, and it changes the dynamic of the band.
With Venom Inc., and then there's the Venom. Is there any lawsuits or legal issues going on between the two camps over the name?
There was an attempt. There was a letter sent from Kronos' lawyer which said, please stop and desist, don't use a name. And we said, what name? If you prove that you own the name, then we'll stop. And we got another letter back saying exactly the same thing. Please stop and desist, don't use a name. We said, we've already asked you. If you can prove that you own the name, then we'll stop. And nothing's come back since. He doesn't own the name. Yeah. He doesn't own the name Venom. He doesn't own the logo. He doesn't own anything to do with that. He doesn't own any of the fucking artwork. He tells everybody he did all the artwork. He fucking didn't.
The courts are run by ex-lawyers. Judges used to be a lawyer. So it just money keeps pouring out, and these poor guys, the bands, are going, I just want to play, So I'm glad that, initially that was my idea. I go, look, you be Mark Kendall's Great White, I'll be Jack Russell's Great White. Oh, no, we're Great White, They didn't even want to let me have Jack Russell's Great White. They just didn't want me to have the name at all. And finally, they realized that I was going to go to court if I had to, and they acquiesced to Jack Russell's Great White. I said, fine, that's great. And then we had to go to whole judge and stuff for the size of Jack Russell versus the size of Great White.
When it changed, I think, was the Paul Rogers thing. When he tried to keep the rest of the guys from using the name because he wasn't in the band anymore. And the judge said, well, are you willing? Are you going out to tour with them, or are you going out to tour as Bad Company? And he said no. And he said, well, then you can't really keep those guys from making a living at it. If you're not using the name, then there really isn't an argument here. If we're talking about you using Bad Company and them using Bad Company, that's different. But if you're not using the name, and if you're just going out as a solo artist, then you can't keep them from making a living. Right. So, and I think that's kind of where things started to change a little bit.
And I think that people should just, play music and don't act like children, because that's what it looks like. These grown men in their 50s battling and word by word on Twitter and doing all this, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know why people can't just get along from the 80s. It seems weird. It's like this trend, So weird. And it's sad, too, because, you spent 30-some years. I hooked up with Mark back in 1977 when I was 16 to start a band.
There was a sort of a disparity, we were sort of on different levels a lot of the time. He'd take speed for a week, or he'd stay up for a week, and then he'd take downers and go to sleep for a week, and we were all buzzing around doing things. I was managing the band, I was sort of arranging gigs. At the end, everybody, we had a problem, because people found it really hard to get on with Lemmy. He was always right because of the speed freak.
President of Noise Records Berlin and the president of Noise Records New York, they decided that the band would be better off if we take the name London off, because it's been a long time, it's been too many people, and they're not going to take you serious, so let's go to DePriest. And for me, it was really hard to take it, because everyone thought, oh fuck, he's going to love it, it's called DePriest and blah blah blah. So that started changing the attitude of the band. The dynamics changed, Krieger changed, the guitar player changed, not so much Brian, but things started getting weird because of the change, to the point where when we're on the road, we Plaid to Rock tour imploded.
He did this, he did that, he did this, he did that. And I'm like, man, I don't want to go to court and deal with all this, pulling everything out of everybody's dirty laundry and waving it in front of a jury and whoever else is going to be there in the press. I just don't want to do that. Depositions were bad enough. Some real serious feelings got hurt there, and that's why we don't get along.
If you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 hits, you've probably got a long career, and it behooves you to really take care of the business early on. And you end up in scenarios where bands that don't take care of their business end up with extraneous members trying to get control of the name, or in some cases, like Molly Hatchet, the manager, Pat Armstrong, own the name. How does the manager own the name? I don't get that.
Media coverage and strong imagery has always been a crucial asset in the entertainment business, especially since most pop artists are here today and gone tomorrow. In the 70s, we had the rise of music publications. In the 80s and 90s, we experienced the dominance of MTV. And today, the media is run by YouTube, social media, and TMZ.
The only way that the fans of heavy metal or music back in that time period, the only way that they had to know about anything that's going on within a band is through a publication. Be it Circus or Metal Hammer or any one of the most popular magazine outlets at the time. That's the only outlet that they had for that particular genre. Now we got the internet. Everything is cheapened. Anything goes.
As far as publicity and marketing for different acts, I can't tell you how important it is. If you have name recognition, you have something that people know, how far that goes.
The thought process for us was to do something a little bit different, but in the same genre. We went with White because it just happened to separate us from everyone.
You take a band like Foreigner, who, they had Lou Gramm. as the lead vocalist. But Foreigner was a faceless band for a good part of that time. They came in the 70s prior to MTV. Of course, they had a few MTV videos, but they had already established themselves before the video age. So people only recognize Foreigner for their sound, not for their faces. So Foreigner is one of those rare bands that can get away with replacing almost all, well, actually all the original members, and Mick Jones touring with the band only periodically, but still sell out a very large venue because people recognize Foreigner for their songs and their sound, not so much their faces. The reason the 80s bands can't get away with that is because MTV put a face to the sound, and so people recognize the faces and the sound.
Look at sequels in Hollywood. I mean, why do they make the same movie, part 2, part 3? They already have the recognition. They already put their marketing budget into something.
Everybody was looking over their shoulder thinking everybody else has got their act together. And none of us had our act together. You know, we all thought, oh, well, the Damned, you know, they've got management and everything, or the Sex Pistols, and they're all thinking, oh, UK Subs, they've got their act together. And the truth is, none of us did. We were making it up as we went along, and management was usually incompetent or crooked.
In the case of some bands, like Black Sabbath, at the point where they did Seventh Star, it was supposed to be a Tony Iommi solo album. And the record label, I would say, persuaded, because I'm sure there was probably a lot of pressure on Tony Iommi to release that album as Black Sabbath rather than Tony Iommi, because the record label knows, and so does Tony and so does the management, that an album and a concert that's billed as Black Sabbath is going to sell exponentially better.
He used to tell me, you know, I could take any 4 monkeys, put anybody that could kind of sing in front of here, and I could sell out gigs. I could make money off this band. I go, what? You're telling me you could make money, you could call it Great White without me singing? He goes, yep. I'm like, you're out of your mind, man. And when all this happened, I realized, I'm going, wow, man, they could actually do it. You know, you see so many bands doing it with one guy, a drummer or something, and you're going like, how, you know, how do you do that? You know, it's the brand. People say, you know, they don't know. Most people don't get on the websites and search out to see who's in the band. I got people still coming up to me going, yeah, I went to see you the other night, man, and you weren't there. There was some other little guy singing. You know what I mean? And I go, yeah, that's been 5 years now. He goes, really? Well, I haven't seen you guys in a while. I go, clearly.
Along with touring and merchandising, publishing is perhaps the most important aspect of the music business. Owning the publishing rights to music that is continuously aired on radio and television, featured in movies, or that has been sampled by newer artists is a key component for any songwriter's financial security.
I originally was licensing music that I had written or co-written with friends, but then I started getting requests for other types of music that I didn't write. Like I did not write country, I did not write Latin, I did not write rap, you know. But very quickly I found guys that could write that material, and so that was the genesis of Master Source, which I developed over the course of 15 years, and in 2007 I sold it to Universal, and I continued to run that division for them for 5 years after that.
I was told at one point that Billy Squier has never made a big comeback because he never sold the publishing to his songs, and a lot of those songs, like The Stroke, have been sampled by hip-hop artists, and he continues to get paid a decent amount of money on those things.
I know a lot of bands, I think Warrant re-recorded a lot of their catalog, Rat, as you mentioned, Whitesnake, Def Leppard. Right. So, you know, a lot of these bands have gotten smart to the concept of owning, you know, their own recordings so that they can be in a position to license them out and earn the master use fees on these licenses.
And if his songs, like The Stroke, are used in films or on soundtracks or TV shows, he continues to get paid. He never sold this, whereas some artists figured that their time was over and that nobody was going to be interested in anymore in what they had done in any way, shape, or form, took a lump sum payout, probably spent it within the first year, and now they are screwed.
Increasingly common to experience more than one version of the same band. This pertains mostly to the 80s hard rock era, where in most cases, feuds have caused members of bands like Queensryche, LA Guns, Rat, Great White, as well as classic 70s rock bands Hawkwind and Sweet, to compete for ownership of the brand.
Do get into the strange situation with bands and the brand name where you get two versions of the band that's out on the road, where you get two of the principal members who just have to agree to disagree, and each has the right to the name. They'll go out with hired hands and go and play.
Well, I'll tell you, I think it's confused the fans, number one, because when you have two different bands, going out essentially as the same band, how do you know which one to go to, number one? Number two, a band has to be run as a business, first and foremost, just like anything else. And so, I think that it does get confusing, and unfortunately, I think it really waters down the brand. If you see one guy doing something with the band that you know and you've loved with the same members for so many years, and one guy's doing something with somebody else, and then part of the band is doing the same thing over here with other people, it just doesn't make sense, in my opinion.
I just want to play music and express myself by whatever means. I was Hawkwind. I'm quite happy to go out as this is my version of Hawkwind, a band that I'm playing with.
If a band is going to go out with one original member, I think it's not necessarily illegitimate if that member is not the lead singer. I'm kind of getting tired of lead singers hijacking bands and becoming the whole bands. People forget that often the original sound of that band was a partnership. Take The Who, for instance. Pete Townsend wrote those lyrics and wrote those songs. If Roger Daltrey did an album calling it The Who without Pete Townsend, I think it would be less legitimate than if Pete Townsend did the same without Roger Daltrey.
I think because I'm not a singer, but I have a problem with that. A lot of times I feel like bands and singers feel like they have I'm the singer, I'm the voice of the band, so I have a bigger right to the name, and I don't buy that at all. I think a band is a band, and everybody has an equal part of it.
Been a slight change in the name. Now it's Dictators NYC.
That's right. It's to have respect for Scott and Andy that are not playing with us, and it's just to give it a little new slant of it's the Dictators, it's the songs, but it gives us a new slant, so that we can move on to the future for our new songs.
People say about, the only Venom is Kronos, Mantis, and Abaddon. And, although that we agree with that lineup could never exist. And that lineup is not as heavy as this lineup.
Yeah, we couldn't get along. I was kind of in the middle trying to keep things right from one side. Jeff was in the middle trying to keep things right from another side. And at the end of the day, it was basically just too much.
If you see us and you see them, it's two different experiences, and I'm not one of those people that gets upset when somebody goes, yeah, man, I saw you were the band last week, and we're here to see you guys. I support both bands. I'm like, that's great.
Of course, we do Heddersleben, which is Nick's backing band. So we have what I consider to be a legitimate ensemble on our own. We add Nick to it, and it becomes Nick Turner's Hawkwind. That's a branding thing. That's for the lawyers and the labels to argue over. I don't concern myself too much with that.
At the end of the day, I'll say this. You got two guys working together out of the band here. Yeah. I've worked with another guy who's been in the band. He's worked with some of the other guys that have been in the band, and you've got one guy in another band at the moment. Yeah. Enough said.
I always tell bands or artists it's the music business. And you need to take care of your business. And I know it's not sexy. I know it's not rock and roll to be concerned with name and likeness and imaging rights issues, etc. But one of the things when you see some of these bands have multiple versions out of the band, they probably didn't properly take care of their business.
Social media and online streaming is not only practical for the music fans, it is also extremely useful for the artists to self-promote at little or no expense. Many claim that technology has gone too far and that free downloads and streaming of music is to blame for the financial downfall of the music industry. Still, music and software companies are scrambling to capitalize on the next wave of technology.
The kids these days are just finding their music, different ways, and in my opinion, a lot of the music is kind of disposable. The artists, they're here today, they're gone later today. So what this represents, with kind of the digital things that are available now, is a way for estates to keep that legacy going, keep that fire burning another generation or two. So
I would say 95% of the people out there have not adjusted to the new business model that's out there. Talking social media, you're talking no MTV, you're talking, no MySpace. I mean, these are all things that came and went in a short period of time.
The new Star Wars film came out, and you have Carrie Fisher and Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing's been dead for 30 years, and they're using him in film. And they had to go to his family, and they had to get permission to CGI and use him in that film. And same thing with Carrie Fisher. I mean, who's to say they don't put her in a film in the next Star Wars sequel? Mm-hmm. And by the way, in the movie, she was 20 years old in the movie. Right. So it's all CG. So now it's important not just for the band to own the brand, for actors, any celebrity, any kind of athlete, anyone that has worth, the family or whoever owns the right. It could be after the person passes away. It's important for the brand to live on because it's worth value.
People said, oh, thank goodness for the internet, man. Now the playing field's leveled, man. Those labels, blah, blah, blah. But it's a label like Metal Blade, that if you bought a record on Metal Blade, you pretty much know that it was going to kick some ass in that genre because Brian Slagle, agreed to put it on his label. If you bought a Guitar Hero on a Shrapnel album, you pretty much know the guy could play guitar because I said, I want to sign this guy, and I wouldn't have done that if it wasn't that way.
Obviously, are a lot of powerful tools available to bands these days, where literally somebody in their living room can gain a worldwide following and have literally the eyes and the ears of millions of people without leaving their living room. I think that's an amazing tool.
Technology doesn't wait for anybody at all. In your lifetime, you see the advent of, say, the 8-track tape, Betamax, compact disc. You're now on to digital downloads, which, in terms of bandwidth and the way music is created, is one of the worst mediums that are out there. Yet, you have huge conglomerate companies, Apple, if you will. They need to have that file so small to make it able to fit on their, phone space-wise, that they're going to shear the bandwidth off the top and off the bottom. So here you have all this technology, as I said before, that doesn't wait for anyone. That's some of the best it's ever been, yet you're still giving the public a piece of, art that is squashed to accommodate the general masses.
When you do away with the labels, you do away with a lot of the quality control. And it's not so wonderful when you only have a limited time to look on the internet to try and find the new band, to go onto one of these sites and says, oh, it sounds like this, and you listen to it and it doesn't at all, and then you're out of time.
There's too many bands. Some of them are legitimate, some of them get together within a few months and making their first record without doing a period of preparation and a journeyman apprenticeship on the road, learning what works and learning from the feedback of the audience what works. That's how I grew up in the early 70s. That's bands would get together and edit themselves. There's no self-editing out there anymore. Everything you write is gold, or so you think, and it really isn't. And it just serves to flood the market with bands that really shouldn't be making records. Not only that, the recording technology has also enabled that as well. So anybody can make a record in their bedroom.
Whether I like that or not, the advent of the internet, took the legs out of a lot of industries, because it just brought it right to you 24/7. Sure. Everything in life now is on demand, instant gratification.
The industry is constantly changing and there are no signs of slowing down. In fact, innovative technology and musical trends are progressing faster than ever before, which is why having control over your brand is critical in order to protect a valuable commodity for the future.
The 70s was a little bit much more of a, you put the band together, you grow up together, and and you're very tight, and you wouldn't think if someone leaves or maybe the band would break up, but it was a very tight thing.
The idea of making a record was so far removed from us that we didn't even consider it. But when punk came along, all of these little indie labels, and then it was a reality. So we signed to a little indie label and we made a 7-inch, and then we got signed to RCA Worldwide and subsequently had a top 10 album and lots of top 20 singles and albums. And it was a gateway to a bigger world for us.
In the early 90s, when the grunge movement came into vogue, it was very apparent to me that guys like me who were, really from the commercial hard rock era, born and bred, dyed in the wool, it was going to be really tough for me to try to get another record deal in that environment.
Back when I started, late 70s and stuff like that, you had a manager, you had an agent, you had a merchandise person. You had a whole team behind you, promoting it. Now it's all inclusive wrapped up into one entity.
Somebody said recently, we don't really have rock stars anymore. In a way, that's kind of almost true. Yeah. We don't really have the kind of thing that we had back in the day. The pop world, I guess that's pop stars, but it's not the same with these bands. There's not really guys that have that kind of bigger than life, persona. I guess because of the saturation with video, there's so much imagery and stuff.
By that time, I'd already been through Keel and my second band, Cold Sweat, which started out being called Ferrari. And I just didn't know if I had it in me to try to be that salmon swimming upstream, against the torrent of the musical river that was changing. And around the same period of time, I started getting some demos of mine used in small TV shows, small movies that friends of mine were working on, and that was my little aha moment.
Especially now, I think that's one of the reasons why bands are not having the importance that they had back then. Because back then, the Zeppelins, the Kiss, all these bands, they were a brand. The fans got involved and became a part of this army. They followed that brand and everything that had to do, like Coke Incorporation or anything else, and that was the whole thing. Now it's like you don't know you hear a song, you'll see somebody listen to a song, she says, I'm listening to a song, who is it? Oh, I don't know, I think, oh yeah, that's who it is. It's like the song is becoming more important somehow and it's losing, but at the same time, the brands that are out now don't have the power that they had, which is why I think all those old brands right now are becoming actually more powerful now than they were even with the younger kids.
Bands put out albums not to make money and sell records now. There's no record sales. It's about getting the press interest to be able to tour off the back of it. You use it as a media outlet.
Who really knows what the career arc of a band is going to be, or an artist's career arc is going to look like? I mean, there are so many bands that I'm sure even among themselves, I remember talking one time to somebody deeply involved in the Led Zeppelin camp, and I said, why do those guys behave so crazily on the road, or all these incredibly nefarious or infamous stories you hear about bad behavior? And he said to me, because they all thought it was going to end in a year or two, and they were all going to go back to being masons or construction guys or whatever, and they wanted to have a bunch of stories to brag to their friends about. And, that makes complete sense based on nobody knows what's going to happen.
A lot of artists now these days feel that indie labels are even a better place for them to be over than a major label. The terms are a lot better. They can, almost custom make their own record contract with an indie label. Maybe hire the label just for this, just for that. Not take a lot of money up front. Start making royalties a lot quicker.
So to make money as an original artist and to make a living at it is even more difficult now than I think it has ever been. And so if you are a musician that has, skills and you want to live indoors, you find ways to make that happen.
It all comes down with musicians, learning about the business side and the legal side of the industry. It's so important. It's so crucial, especially nowadays. When you have so many different forms of content online and all the media, and all of those things play a crucial role in keeping a brand together, intact, and successful.
To sustain a steady career in the music industry, you need to tour relentlessly. Today, it's harder than ever for artists to book profitable tours, leading to more package tours and select weekend stints at rock festivals, fairs, casinos, and the occasional cruise ships.
It's not overplaying the market, it's keeping it special, keeping the name alive. You get people that don't like it, well then don't come to the shows. Simple as that.
You end up in these scenarios where for somebody like Blackmore, to get a bunch of young kids, they're going to be able to brag, "Ooh, I played with Richie Blackmore," and they'll do whatever he says. They'll jump through every hoop. They'll accept terrible accommodations on the road. They'll accept a low per diem.
If you have a large demographic and you're friendly in that manner, you can play a lot of different places. And again, there's a much better payday than trying to sell 100 tickets to the whiskey on a Thursday night at 11 o'clock or something.
They did not want to pull Leonard Skinner off the road, because if there was Leonard Skinner, any version, any members on the road playing those classic songs, then people would hear that, either go and buy the albums or download the songs, and that the estates of any members, whether it's Leonard Skinner or Jefferson Starship, they're going to get royalties off the merchandise. So it's in the ex-members' interests or their estates to keep a version of the band on the road, because it generates money for the original members and or their estates.
The kosher ticketing firms are now having their own secondary ticketing sites where a tour is sold out within an hour, but you can get 80% of the tickets for that tour for sale 3 times the price on a secondary ticketing site. That's not sold out.
We just did every gig we could get, we just played everywhere, played free concerts, played benefits, played in prison a couple of times, just doing anything we could get, and making ourselves generally available and supportive of different causes.
With Angel, if we decided to put that together, I'm sure with a new album, I'm sure if we did some dates that everyone would want to hear us do the old stuff as opposed to the new stuff. Where I remember when I first started going to see concerts, you would go to see, them play the newest album. When I went to see Zeppelin, I always wanted to go hear them play the newest album. I didn't want to hear the first album. I already heard that, But nowadays, it's not like that. So, it's very difficult to figure it out. But, it is a whole different animal.
You've got corporate buyers. For a lot of these acts, the bread and butter has become playing the corporate show. The money's incredible. They have 1,000 salespeople in a drunken frenzy in a room, and here comes, this band who sounds just like all the hits they remember from the 80s or 90s or what have you, and everybody has a great time.
No matter how rich you are, if you're buying U2 tickets and it's costing you $1,000 for two tickets, you've got no money for the rest of that month that you're spending on entertainment to go and see your B, C, and D level acts. So that's why packaging those B, C, and D level acts is very important, and having the name is all important, especially when it comes to when you're an older act. If you're a classic rock act, same with Bobby did with Rat. The casinos, all they want is that name on the marquee.
The casual music fan has the unique ability to impact the career of contemporary artists through social media, websites, and blog pages.
You know, people really want to go there and relive their youth and have a good time. And to me, I think if they feel that it sounds like they want it to sound, they don't want to have these 8-minute exploratory jams in the middle of their favorite song. They want to hear the hits the way they know the hits.
I think it's hard on a lot of bands because, you know, you get these fans, especially on social media, that come in and they start, you know, oh, it's, you know, no Phil, no Lizzie. We've had it with Thin Lizzy a lot. And, you know, and why isn't Brian Robertson in the band? Why isn't Snowy White in the band? Why isn't, you know, I feel like going, you know, why aren't you with your first wife? Well, because I hated her. Yeah, but she was a lot hotter than your current wife. You know, so can you please get with your first wife? Because that's what I want. You know, no, of course, you know, things happen.
Well, as far as the fans, I think the fans want to hear the songs. If you can present the songs in a good way and you can perform them well, I think you're serving the fans well, because the fans want to hear that. And fans don't necessarily, even if they know, they want to be entertained.
I think at some point you have to realize you have what you have, and if it's no longer viable, and I guess really that can be an argument, what is viable, right? But here's the thing, and this relates back to the Hall of Heavy Metal History, it's what the true hardcore, diehard fans really want. And that's where it affects the brand.
It's interesting how that works. People, it seems like the fans gravitate to this brand, and somehow that brand means something to them and becomes really, really important. And it's almost like they rebel when you take that and try to dilute it in some kind of a way.
Keeping up with technology in the entertainment business is a major challenge. New innovation and modernization is often met with controversy from fans and critics alike. Using today's technology, a hologram of a deceased artist can keep the spirit and branding rights alive.
We have the hologram that we're working on right now.
Now, talk about that for a second. A hologram, you know, that's got to be a really bizarre kind of a thing to do, but at the same time, it is extending the legacy of.
It is, and I worked on the one that we debuted at the Wacken Festival.
Right, and how did it go?
I worked on it for over a year with the people, and I didn't think it was going to affect me, but when I actually saw him up on stage with his own band, because it's this real live band playing with him, I cried, the record company cried, and all the fans cried. Wow. It was amazing.
Everything has been done so respectfully, and they are very determined, Simon and Craig and everybody, about being respectful to Ronnie and pay respect. I don't think Ronnie would have had any problems with anything, because that they're all about that. When it comes to choosing the songs, what kind of gigs we do, everything is all about, let's make sure this is something that he would like.
Let's say 10 years from now there's a technology and they could take all the video footage of, say, David Bowie and recreate Ziggy Stardust like it's a brand new concert. Everything remastered, his image. Well, someone's getting paid for that. They own that brand. Yeah, David Bowie's dead. So they're going to take that image on some future technology, and maybe in Madison Square Garden they're going to have a concert with David Bowie doing Ziggy Stardust, and they're going to get, say, $50 a ticket. You know, I mean, it's brand is huge.
I'm a contractor, and I build a lot of recording studios and studio environment types of places, so I got hired to build or to convert an old theater in Hollywood Boulevard into a hologram theater. And you know, nuts and bolts thing, it's hard to get all that gear is insane that they use, but their first show is going to be Billie Holiday playing on stage with a live band. The hologram of Billie Holiday is going to be playing. And it's just the beginning. They know that they've got, it's the same people that own the technology that did the Tupac Shakur hologram.
It's pioneering stuff. Elvis has done it and all that. But you see, the difference between Lemmy and Ronnie, they were touchable. Elvis was untouchable. You could go and say hello to Lemmy any night down the rainbow. He wouldn't, you know, there was no bodyguards around. With Ronnie would always have time for his fans. You could, you know, if you went to a Dio show and you wanted to meet Ronnie, there was no issue with that. it works for Elvis in the Vegas sort of thing, and I think it's cool in that because it's just an illusion for another show. Whether it works for rock and rollers that we knew and loved on a sort of more down-to-earth level, if that makes sense, has got to be seen. The problem I have with it right now, totally honestly, is the cost of producing that versus how they're going to put it out there and get the revenue back. I don't know yet.
It's expensive to, right now the technology is pretty big. Like the hardware is sizable machinery that they need, and it's interesting how they have these under stage cameras and then over stage cameras, and there's all these there's spatial requirements that have to be fulfilled. A certain width in order to get a live sized person. Right. But I'm sure that'll all get they'll figure it out. It'll get miniaturized and smaller and smaller. You could have Metallica play in your bedroom.
Personally, I think it's a cool thing. The world has to evolve. You know what I mean? The whole hologram thing is an amazing thing, I think, in general. And of course, if you can't see the people, if they're gone, they're gone.
To me, it's interesting. I'd like to see how that develops and how that fits into the future of the rock concert events. You know what I mean? The whole experience. I don't know. I've never seen a concert. I've never been to a concert where I've seen a hologram. So I would definitely like to see that. I don't know who it will be with, but I would like to see something like that, and then maybe I will have maybe I'll have a better opinion about it.
Right.
But right from the get-go, I wouldn't be negative about it.
Being that I was, I lived during the era of the real thing, the real deal. I guess you could say, oh, this is just a cheap ripoff, a cheap knockoff. So I'm going to go take the other side of the coin here, that if they're doing this and fans who were not alive during that era did not have the opportunity to experience that, I think it's kind of a cool chance for them to see that performer live, figuratively, to understand the greatness of what made that artist great. For fans who actually saw the real thing in person, it seems like a cheap knockoff. So there's kind of like a yin and a yang to the whole thing.
People that didn't really know the original performer, or who were even old enough in that day and age, could benefit from that. I, as a backing member of any band, or I've played with some high-profile folks that, to me it would be just plain strange to be backing up this hologram that's projected up there. It's like, well, at least, there wouldn't be any canceled shows. I mean, they'll show up on time. You don't have to pay that person, so, I suppose there's some perks to it.
I would feel weird about putting something like that out there. But that's just me. I know the fans really love it, and I know it's a cool thing, and I'm really not in a position to really comment on it. But, there's just something that feels a little, I don't know, it feels like science has gone too far.
Yeah. You can never replace the real thing. I don't want to sound negative, but at the same time, that's the closest thing as you're ever gonna get to Prince or Ronnie or David Bowie, whoever you. So I think it's a cool thing, and if it can be done like this company we work with are amazing, and if you do it that way and they keep improving everything, I think people will enjoy it. My personal opinion, I think it needs to be balanced with, hey, let's bring out real singers as well.
So obviously now with the technology advances and the advent of the hologram, there's another whole new side of this debate, is these ideas, Ronnie James Dio, Tupac, being on stage as a hologram. David Bowie, Michael Jackson, now there's talk about Lemmy. I don't know. To me, it's a little creepy. It's not even interesting to me personally, but then again, I'm not the person that's going to necessarily go buy a ticket to go see a hologram exhibit. I'd rather see somebody still living and sweating and breathing.
I never got to see Phil Lynott. He died before, Thin Lizzy didn't come around to Buffalo, New York very often, and I never got to see Lynyrd Skynyrd. I was 15 when Lynyrd Skynyrd died. Would I have loved to see that band in front of me, or maybe in a virtual world situation? Yeah. So as a fan, I kind of get it too, and I think if it's done tastefully, it's done respectfully, it's done, obviously, those who control the estate have to have creative control over it to make sure, these characters are not doing anything profane or doing anything that would tarnish the legacy, of the artist.
I don't know which is more creepier, when I go to see a tribute band dressed up like a band that I've seen live, or to see a hologram. But I got to tell you though, I would be interested to see what the hologram looks like.
New fans, yeah, it would be very nostalgic. For new fans, it would be awesome to see a hologram, of guys in their prime, with the real voice, and, it'd be great.
You can see the viewpoint of the people that own the IP, the intellectual property. If you're a deal, if you're a steward of the Bowie, trust, that this represents an opportunity for you to keep milking the cow, I guess. Maybe that's too harsh of a term, but it's an opportunity for you to continue the legacy onto another generation, perhaps, because as we know now, record sales in general are decreasing. So how are you going to reach a new generation of fans?
If that's the only option, it's great, and I think that they're doing really interesting things with this hologram thing, and I'm actually excited to go see some of it. Because you're right, it gets a chance to bring back all those great experiences and things that people, wouldn't see.
Who knows what the future holds? Perhaps the day will come when brands will completely take over the bands and human interaction will be superseded by artificial intelligence.
Classic rock radio is as strong now as it ever was. And when these, what a legacy to pass down to your kids. If you own the trademark of a name and have the songs, and I think it's going to be, like Gene Simmons has talked about it many times, franchising Kiss out. I think Ricky Medlock did it with Blackfoot, I believe, when he got some younger guys to play the music. I didn't see it, I don't know what it was like, but at the end of the day, you get these huge names, and whoever owns that branding could go on for years.
Brandon is definitely Brandon Mendenhall, and our job is really to help that brand grow. It's his dream, and we're there to support it and bring it up as much as we can. At the same time, we're here living our dream, helping him live his.
Now we're at a place where if the five of us don't do it together, it's probably not going to happen. So I think it's got to be something that the five of us sit down, talk about, and try and work it out logistically, because everyone has different lives and everything now, and everyone's doing different things. So if everyone can make time to do it, we might do it. If not, then we're happy with where we're at with it.
Get an agreement together so you know what happens when somebody leaves or quits, somebody gets fired. God forbid somebody in the band dies. Now you're in business with that person's estate or their spouse or whatever. I mean, does a band really want to be in business with the wife of one of their former members? Probably not.
The two things that count in the music industry, being totally original or being better than everybody else. And it's hard to be better than everybody else because there's a lot of talent out there. So be different. Bring it.
I'll rest when I'm dead, with no knowledge that I was ever alive, and I'm going to make the most of this.
I'm going to do it till I die, and that's just the way it is. Hopefully I die on stage.
What prompted you to get involved in the whole wine thing?
I'm a wino, and I needed a close supply.
Yeah, but are you deeply involved in the blending?
Yeah. I'm involved in everything with it. I actually made my first wine when I was about 13, and I made Yeah, kind of learned about it, and I've always been kind of fascinated with the chemistry of it, you know. And then through traveling, I've tried a lot of different wines, and kind of discovered what I really like and what I don't like, and decided to kind of lean in that direction as a hobby. And it turned out to be something that I really like doing.
I'm on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and joining me today is Dave Mustaine. So now, speaking about wine and beer, you are actually a businessman. You have your vineyard, craft beer. Tell our viewers about this.
Well, we've been really fortunate. In 2014, I started our wine business when I played with the San Diego Symphony, and it wasn't really something we thought we were going to end up doing. It just took off, and the beer company was something that I did for myself because during the day I don't want a glass of wine, I wanted a beer. So we talked to a couple of people. Unibrew was the perfect partnership for us, and this is a gold medal beer. We won a gold medal at the Chicago International Beer Festival.
You have like 9,000 little products here, man. And now I hear wine, and I see this beer thing here.
I know.
This looks great.
Yeah, this is a coffee stout here.
Coffee stout.
Hydra Beer asked if they could infuse our Urban Legend coffee into their beer, and I'm told it's kind of like, say, like a Guinness ale. You know what I mean? So it's got thick and creamy, and
got some depth.
Yeah, some depth. Probably gets you drunk and keeps you hyper at the same time. I don't know, something like that.
Whatever works, right? I mean, you got to do. You're covering all the bases.
Exactly.
You get them coming and going with the coffee and the beer.
Well, look, we're a rock and roll coffee company. That's what we do.
That's what you do.
British heavy metal band Iron Maiden is releasing a new line of beer. The announcement of the Belgian-style beer called Hallowed came on July 4th. In a statement, Iron Maiden frontman Bruce Dickinson and Robertson's master brewer Martin Weeks will be collaborating on the project. The alcohol by volume for the Belgian-style Hallowed will be at 6%. Regarding brewing a Belgian beer, Dickinson said, quote, "I'm a big fan of Belgian beers, so I jumped at the chance to brew my own." This isn't Iron Maiden's first foray into beer making. Back in 2013, the group released their first beer called Trooper. According to Billboard, Trooper has sold 15 million pints since then.
When I brought the rum out and got my distribution across America, my whole reason was to turn people on to that part of my lifestyle. Man, put on a friggin' pair of shorts, some flip-flops, you don't need shoes, and whip up a drink, turn on the damn sprinkler if you have to, man, and sit around in a bathing suit, and I'm telling you, there's your vacation.